Hey there to my 25 subscribers, my future subscribers, and all the people that secretly watch me without subscribing. Today I'm going to do a story time. Technically it's about my dad, but it's more about what he went through, why he got sick, and what he went through after he got sick. Because a lot of people don't realize just how sensitive our bodies are and what could happen with just the littlest things that a lot of people don't even think about. I'm not real good at remembering the order of some things, especially like this, because it just it all ran together. It was a long couple of years, and I don't actually remember the order of things, so it's going to be kind of random, but I'll do the best I can. So at one point my mom called me and she told me that my dad had been sick and she didn't know what to do, and I talked to my dad later. He said he was fine, that there was nothing wrong, and so I didn't put much thought into it. And obviously he just didn't want anybody to tell him what to do. So he just kept denying that he was sick. And then at one point my mom called me and she's like telling me that he hadn't eaten in, I don't even remember how long, if it was days or whatever, and that he was so weak that he could barely lift his head up. And I was like, well, that's a little weird, since he said he was fine when I talked to him on the phone just days earlier. And what really got me and made me realize something was wrong was that he had agreed to let me bring over some colloidal silver. And for those that don't know, which I think we'll do a video on it sometime, but colloidal silver, basically you break down the silver into water using electricity and salt, and it destroys bacteria when you drink it. There is a very, very slim chance, I don't know the numbers, that you could have a bad reaction to it. Like I said, I'll do a video on the colloidal silver later. That's not what this video is about. But my dad used to always call it voodoo, because anything that wasn't directly from God he thought was voodoo. And which is why he didn't believe in doctors, which is, I think, part of why he didn't want me to know he was sick, because he didn't want anybody bothering him about going to the doctor. But now he was admitting that he would like to try the colloidal silver, so obviously he was sick. And I took it over there, gave it to him, seeing that he was actually like really, really weak. I've never actually seen anybody that weak before. And by the end of the day, I was told that he was able to, I don't remember if it was eat or drink something or whatever, but he was able to keep it down. And I was like, okay, we'll just use it, a couple times a day until you're feeling better. And he agreed to do it. And he didn't do it, but he agreed to. And so then I don't remember how much more time went by, and my mom called me and said that my dad gave her permission to take him to the hospital. And I guess that's kind of more of when the reality hit, because for him to go to the hospital was extreme. Like, he didn't go to doctors, like he just didn't. And so she told us that he couldn't get up, he couldn't move. And so I was with a guy named Bill at the time, and Bill had an old army stretcher and he had a big van, so we went over there with the Army stretcher. We got help from my son's dad and put him on the stretcher, put him in the van, took him to the hospital. And we got there and found out they had to remove a chunk of his leg because of an ingrown hair. And when I say a chunk, I'm thinking it was like maybe about like this big, because of an ingrown hair getting neglected and getting infected. And the reason he was so sick is because the infection spread through his entire body and made him septic. And so the hospital here tried to remove a lot of it, but like they removed the main part, the main infection, but he needed a lot removed, and they didn't want to hurt him, so they sent him to Reno. And in Reno, they went, put him to sleep, and did what they had to do. He was at Reno for a little while they monitored him and tried to convince him to have other surgeries for other problems he had, and he refused because he didn't want to be there in the first place, and thought he was going to go to hell because he was at the hospital. And so eventually they transferred him to the nursing home here, and they sent him there for wound care and for physical therapy to try and teach him how to walk again, because he couldn't walk. What they didn't understand, apparently he hadn't been walking for a while, which I didn't know that either. But he hadn't walked for a long time, and so that was just not happening. He tried, but he was too weak. And so they sent him home. And I don't remember what all happened. I know that he'd gone to the doctors a couple of times. The hospital fire department came and helped him up when he couldn't get up. The guy I was with at the time, Bill, him and I went over there and helped him up once. But when in the process of doing that, both of his shoulders popped, and it kind of freaked us out a little bit. So we told him that we weren't going to do it again. We weren't going to take a chance of injuring him. And so then the last time, fire department came and insisted that he went back to the hospital. And at the hospital, they told my dad that his kidneys had shut down or almost completely shut down because of the infection that he had had. And the fact that he was diabetic probably didn't help that. They wanted him to go on to dialysis so he could get a kidney transplant. And so here we are with my dad, who didn't believe in doctors, telling him that they wanted to put a different kidney in him, which he absolutely refused. He said that he wasn't going to take an organ that belonged to somebody else because it was against his beliefs. And so there was no point in doing the dialysis, which they would have had to send him to Reno, which is 170 miles from here. And so he was adamant he didn't want to do it. And the doctors kept pushing, and I told them no. Well, the doctors asked me to leave the room. They talked him into it. I went back in the room, and they told me they were preparing him to transport him to Reno. I asked what was going on. They explained it, and I asked my dad if that's what he wanted, and he said no. And I asked him why he agreed to it, and he said because they wouldn't leave him alone. So I did not let them take him. And I don't know, some people might say that was wrong of me, but I was more concerned about his wishes and what he wanted, because it was his body, and that's what mattered. And so anyway, he stayed at the hospital for a little bit before, well, while he was at the hospital, they were running tests, monitoring his kidneys, what little function there was. They said there was nothing they could do, and without the dialysis, like there was nothing they could do to help him. I do remember they did do a couple blood transfusions, which he agreed to. That was his choice. He said it was okay, so I didn't stop it. And he kept talking about how much pain he was in. They could not, they didn't know what to do because the medication that they were giving him, I think they were giving him Vicodin, and it wasn't working anymore. He insisted he didn't want morphine because while he was in Reno, they gave him morphine, and he said that he thought he was strapped to the bed on the wall and couldn't get down, so he didn't want it, and so I didn't let them give him the morphine. The only other option was fentanyl, and that's the second part of this video, is what happened after they gave him the fentanyl. And when we agreed to it, the hospital didn't have any of the lower doses, so they went with the lowest one they had, and I don't remember what it was, but I know it was quite a bit higher than what the lowest was. And I told him that we could try it, and if he started acting altered, I wanted it taken off, and they agreed. Well, in the meantime, my brother had bought him a new computer, and before he actually went to the hospital, he had bought him a new computer, and it was in the process of shipping, and so it showed up while he was at the hospital, and they let us bring it in, set it up, so he could use it. And then they decided that they couldn't keep him at the hospital anymore, so they sent him back over to the nursing home. And in the process of taking him over to the nursing home, his computer was, on one of those rolling carts that they use at the hospital that, they set the trays, they set your food on and stuff. And we I don't remember who, I think it might have been maybe the maintenance worker, rolled the tray over to his room at the nursing home, because it was like across the parking lot. And my dad got mad. He said that wasn't his computer. And I was like, there's no way it's somebody else's computer. He insisted somebody stole his, and that was somebody else's. And I didn't realize at the time that it was the fentanyl that was making him act this way. We just thought he was being stubborn and weird. And so we took the computer out of his room. I kind of moved things around on the table, shuffled it around a little bit, make it look like it was a different setup, and took it back in there. And he was happy. He said, "Oh yeah, that's my computer." And so we set it up, and like I said, we didn't understand at the time that the fentanyl was what was causing the behavior. And that's when things they started off kind of weird in a slow way. It was just minor things at first, He said there was water dripping from the ceiling. And we just kept looking, and we're like, no, we don't see any water dripping. We checked his arm, he was dry. We even had maintenance come in and check. They're like, no, there's no drips. There's nothing. It's fine. And then he started telling us there's things on the wall, like just various things. There was a hair on the wall. We tried to find the hair on the wall. We thought, oh, he's just seeing something else. He's got bad eyesight. His eyes were probably about as bad as mine are now. So we just like, okay, well, it's just optical illusion of some sort. He said there was paper on the wall and it fell. We're looking around his bed trying to find it. I mean, I don't remember at what point, but at some point they actually lowered his bed to the floor because they were worried he was going to fall out and hurt himself. and so his bed was directly on the floor for a while. But I'm not sure exactly at what point that was. But still, at this point, we thought maybe, he was just imagining things because he was sick, or because his eyes were messed up. And then things got really weird, and these things aren't going to be like in any particular order because I don't remember what order they happened in. But at one point, he called the police because he had his cell phone with him. He called them, told them that his room was on fire. My mom was holding him down. She wouldn't let him escape. And he was trying to kill her, or she was trying to kill him. And, the police took it seriously. They had to come check on him, and he was fine. Well, then he also called the police on the nurses and said that they had him shackled to the bed. And, of course, the cops come again. Nothing wrong. And so the nurses started talking to me, telling me what was going on. At this point, I had already been made his medical power of attorney, so I was in charge if there were any concerns about his medications or anything like that. So the nurses would come to me and tell me what was going on, and I was like, I don't know why he would say these things. And they're like, well, he's just getting really sick. And he started complaining about kittens attacking him all the time. The kittens were always attacking his feet, and he wanted the kittens taken out of his room. We're like, there's no kittens, we don't see, we haven't seen any. We actually started looking for kittens because we knew that there were some animals in there. There was some fish, there was a dog, there was, I don't know, there might have been a cat in the hospital somewhere. I don't really remember. But there were animals, so we're like, oh, we'll look around, and we kept trying to find him. And we quickly realized he was hallucinating. And he asked my son, at the time my son was, I think, 10, and he asked my son to take the cat off of his leg and take it outside. And my son just played along with it, and he went, pretended to pick up a cat, disappeared out the door for a little bit and come back. And my dad's like, no, that was the wrong one. And come to find out, he was imagining these cats because his legs were filling up with fluid, and they were irritating him, and it just felt like he was being clawed. So we understood that hallucination. That made sense. And then he was telling me, oh, these kids came in. They were running around his bed, knocked his phone off the floor, and it fell in some water. And that it didn't work anymore. And I was like, okay. So I took his phone, and I took that opportunity to delete the phone numbers for the police department and the sheriff's department and stuff like that. I had already had like a whole bunch of covers for these phones. It was the old Nokia phones. And it had like 20 different covers. So I put a different color on it, changed some things on the phone, and told him I got him another phone. And so he was content with that. And at some point we realized that he still had the fentanyl patch on. I don't remember who saw it. Somebody noticed he still had the patch on. And we started telling the nurse to take it off. I don't remember who told her first. Between my mom, Bill, and me, we were all telling her, take the patch off of him. And she said, oh, the patch has nothing to do with the hallucinations. He's hallucinating because his kidneys are shutting down and he's sick. And things got a little bit heated. I'm not going to go into complete details. But in the end, the nurse was made to take the patch off. And he still kept hallucinating, but the hallucinations were not quite the same. I guess I should finish what some of these hallucinations were before I get to, it's already 20 minutes in the video. I'm sorry, this has taken a while. But Anyway, the hallucinations that he was having before they actually agreed to pull it off, there were kids stealing things, running through his room, coming in and out of his closet. There were naked people in his closet hiding. There were huge toads all over his computer. I thought he meant the picture, but no, he meant there were actual toads all over his computer. He got upset when I was walking around his bed because he thought I was going to fall through the floor, because apparently he thought I was walking on beams and there was no floor. And there was a basement and he thought I was going to fall into it. He said there was a doctor sitting in a chair at the foot of his bed, writing down everything he said, everything I said. So he started whispering to me. Every time he wanted to tell me something, he would whisper in my ear because he thought everybody was out to get him. He thought everybody was against him and nobody believed him, because, I mean, there was, I don't know if it was a nurse or physical therapist or something that started being mean to him and telling him to knock it off, that stuff wasn't real. But so he started whispering to me everything, and he was like asking me to help him get a piece of tape off the wall, and I was like, I don't see the tape. And he's like, right there. So I pretended to pull the tape off and hand it to him, and he's sitting there and he was fidgeting with it, and he's like this, and he asked me to hold my hand out, and I hold my hand out, and he pretends to put something in my hand. He's like, what is that? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, what do you think it is? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, let me go see if anybody else knows. So I asked my mom, I asked Bill, neither one of them knew. I asked my son, and my son's like, no, I can't tell what it is. And then my dad's like, come here for a minute. And so I went over there so he could whisper in my ear again. And he's like, they're Sprite condoms, and they're made out of steel. And I'm like, they're what? You know, because like, it just was absurd, you know. But he kept, all of a sudden there was like, he started talking about Sprites a lot. And he said that they had trapped him in a closet, you know, on one of the gurneys in the closet, and he couldn't get out, and he had a water bottle with him, and he squeezed it and squirted it, and it hit the fire alarm, which set the whole hospital on fire and burnt the hospital down. And so then they stuck him in another closet in a temporary hospital while they rebuilt the hospital. Now keep in mind, this was many years before they ever built a new hospital here. But according to him, the hospital burnt down, and they were building a new hospital and keeping him in a closet whenever we weren't visiting. And he said that the Sprites lived in the room next door, and that they were actually pictures. They had white hair, and they were photographs, but they were living photographs. Like the Sprites were photos, but they were floating around his room, checking on him, and they were doing things. They were like alive. And so yeah, there was that. And then there were robots, lots of robots on the ceiling. Some of them were going around looking for viruses to collect. Some of them were squirting him with a squirt gun. I believe that the squirt gun and the water dripping on him and stuff had something to do with like a physical thing he was feeling that was causing the hallucinations. But also some of the robots had spy cameras. They were spying on us, and we had to be really quiet so they didn't know what we were saying. And at one point there was different colors of blood dripping off the ceiling. And there was a 3-car pileup right outside his window, and quite a bit of other things. But once the fentanyl patch was taken off of him, he slowly, like really slowly, started acting more normal. And at one point, he said something about the hallucinations he was having, and I said, yeah, I didn't know how to respond to him, so I just played along. My son and I both just played along with all of his hallucinations. And he said, well, he appreciated it, but he knew they weren't real. It was just easier to go along with them. And I was just like, okay. But anyway, he ended up dying there at the nursing home back in August of 2012. So it's been 10 years. And he did pretty much get his mind back once he got off the patch. I understand the nurse, thought that it was just because he was sick, and I don't hold nothing against her for that. She didn't understand that he wasn't used to medication at all, and so it wasn't technically her fault, and she was just obeying the rules. She didn't have the power to take it off, but she did end up having to take it off. And it's starting to get hot in here. It's a warm day. So anyway, sorry this ended up so much longer than normal, but the story's even longer than this. I was just wanting people to understand that something as small as an ingrown hair, if you let it get infected, could in the end actually kill you. So please be aware of that. Take care of yourself. Take care of your health. If you have a problem and you can't fix it, go get help. And also, fentanyl is not really a great thing, and it was actually doing more damage to his system, while he was on it. Besides the fact that he was terrorized by all these hallucinations. And I know there's a lot of people out there that use it by choice. That's up to them. But some people can handle it, some can't. So anyway, that's the end of what I want to say. And please like, subscribe, comment, give me your thoughts, say something. And I will try to respond. YouTube's not been real good about notifying me, so sometimes I have to search for replies, but I'll do my best. So anyway, thank you, and I'll see you next weekend, if not sooner. Bye. Guy right now, you wanna try me, don't try right now. Got killers around me, and a few in the cuts, girl, we all tooed up. This a club full of nuts, get the hater out of here, make room for the slut.